No. Or yes.
In this video, we are going to discuss whether you get a credit card or not and why the experts can agree.
And now for the disadvantages. Our first disadvantage is the fees. You are paying money to be able to have money available to you before you have the money. So that's a long-winded way of saying that you are paying for the privilege of being able to spend money before you have it. So some cards will have lower fees, some cards will have higher fees. There's obviously a value add for the cards that have higher fees, which means, for example, if you're with American Express, they will give you free health insurance and travel insurance, and they will give you a concierge if you are high enough in the rankings and if you pay an exorbitant fee. So always weigh up whether the fees are equal to the value that you're going to get. The second is the payment delay. Again, it was an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage. So the payment delay means that if you're receiving your $1,000 and you spend that money, you no longer have the money to pay for the credit card if you have used your $1,000 limit. Now you're in trouble because you have to pay interest when you are late making your payments. You might have to pay a fee if you are late making your payments, and they will charge you interest, which is point number 3, disadvantage number 3. So every day that you have not paid that money, they are going to charge you interest. So it might be at first $1,000 that you owe, then all of a sudden, a few days later, you owe 1,010, and then 1,020, 1,030. But you don't even have the $1,000 to pay, and so it just accumulates and accumulates. So that payment delay is a temptation that you need to be very, very careful of. So as I said, interest charges. And it's not just the fact that there is interest charges, but the fact that it is so high. You're paying sometimes up to 23, 24, 25% interest on these credit cards. So make sure that you know how much you are paying and make sure that you pay them off on time to avoid such exorbitant interest charges. And then there's the minimum repayment. So if you receive your bill and you owe the credit card company $1,000, they might say, okay, it's okay if you just pay $300 for now. And so you make that minimum repayment of $300, but they're charging interest over that remaining amount. So that $700 that you haven't paid, they'll charge you interest over. And the bank is very smart. They know that if they offer you a minimum repayment, you're likely to take that minimum repayment because it means that you pay less, which means that you still have money left over in your pocket, which means you feel good. But even though you feel good, the bank is charging you interest and they are putting you into a debt trap. And so number 5 is the debt trap. And it is a combination of the interest, the minimum repayments, the payment delay. They are setting you up for failure. They allow you to take the time to pay. They will give you a minimum repayment. They will charge you interest. They will charge you fees. If you are late, they will charge you fees. And so very many people end up getting into trouble because they have a very high credit card debt. The bank will just let them borrow more and more and more and know that they will be indebted to the bank forever. And so the bank will be able to take certain parts of their income for the rest of their lives. So this is what the bank would really like to do, is make you a slave. So unless you are extremely good at managing your credit card, it can be a death trap if you don't know what you're doing and if you lose your emotional ability to be able to think clearly, which often happens when you get into that stressful situation and then you have an emergency and you don't have the cash and then you use your credit card to pay for it, but then the money doesn't come in the way you need it to, and all of a sudden you are trapped and you are hooked, and then the bank will lend you more in order to be able to get yourself out of trouble, and then your minimum repayments will go up, but you're only paying the minimum repayments and the interest amount just keeps growing and growing and growing, and before you know it, you have a 50, 60, 70, 80, sometimes $100,000 worth of debt on a credit card. And for many people, it is a nightmare. And finally, our last disadvantage is once again credit score, an advantage and a disadvantage. So while there is an advantage to being able to increase your credit score if you are very savvy with your credit card, if you are late with your payments, if you are only making your minimum repayments, if you are being charged extra fees and then you're getting further and further into debt, instead of your credit score going up, your credit score will go down. So now it becomes more difficult for you to be able to borrow money from the bank in order to be able to pay for a property or to be able to borrow money for other things. It will be more difficult for you to be able to get a mobile phone because the mobile phone company will check your credit history and they might tell you that you can only get a prepaid phone because you don't deserve a postpaid phone, because they don't trust you to be able to make the payments since you were not good at managing your money with a credit card. So they don't trust you're going to be good with managing your phone bills either. So that is the final disadvantage. Let's get to the conclusion now.